Welcome to the Let's Go Racing Family podcast, sharing our love through NASCAR, running, and just racing through life.
Hosted by Sebastian, Giovanni, Karen, Tony, and me, Johan.
Each week we'll talk about our view of the world through the lens of racing.
So, we're back recording again. It's been a little bit, but we got a lot to talk about. So it was a good starting point. I guess we can use our Chicago trip. We went up to Chicago for the street race, which was a very cool experience. And Dad, why don't you go a little bit into depth about it? Because it was a lot of fun.
Well, first off, this was something that we wanted to do last year. And then we changed our plans and decided we weren't going to go. And then when we told people that, it was like, wow, well, you made the right decision because it rained the entire weekend. So we committed this year. We were going to go to Chicago. And what was super cool about this weekend is we decided we were going to fly up to Chicago on the 4th of July. And on that day, we were also going to go to Wrigley Field to watch one of our favorite baseball teams, actually two of our favorite baseball teams, the Phillies and the Cubs, play each other on the 4th. So that was the start of our 4th of July weekend, is actually going to a Phillies-Cubs game at Wrigley Field, and literally straight from the airport. So yeah, so we did that, and then what happened? So how did the game go, Johan? What would you? I know it wasn't the result we were wanting.
As rooting for the Phillies, it was a disaster. I would say the best part is Wrigley and the food. The food was amazing, but that game was a mess for the Phillies. Great seeing the Phillies though. Once again, and the Cubs, seeing them too was amazing. Great way to spend our opening of the 4th of July.
I will say, growing up with both the Phillies and the Cubs, I kind of was okay with either side winning. And I remember one of my core baseball memories is watching the Cubs win the World Series back in 2016. So being in Wrigley Field and hearing them sing "Go Cubs Go" at the end, to me, "Go Cubs Go" is the best sports theme song of all time. So that is a really great memory I'll remember.
Yeah, and this was actually the first time that Gio and Johan went to Wrigley Field. Sebastian had been there twice, but he was little, so I don't think he really remembers it much. But this is the first time that the three of them have had the opportunity to experience Wrigley Field and actually remember everything. So it was a lot of fun to be there as a family of 5 this time. The last time we were there, we were a family of 3. So it was a lot of fun. And of course, Wrigley is one of those, iconic, historic baseball stadiums. So it was great to be there.
Yeah, it was plenty cool to go too, because I remember you and Mom have a painting or like a portrait in your room of Wrigley in black and white. And I'm like, oh, cool. And we were walking around and we see the exact same side of like where that mural is.
Yeah, you said, Mom, is that the one? Is this the side that's in your, like the picture that's in your room?
So it was cool. It was cool to see it like now in color, I guess, compared to the black and white of it. But yeah, very cool stadium, very historic stadium. The everything about it was just really cool. Like I loved how they had some of the seats were on rooftops outside of it, but you could still see it, and it seemed like very good seats, very good views. So very cool baseball stadium. Probably one of the more unique ones, I think. So it was just really fun to go. The game was all right, but yeah, very cool experience for that.
And it was your second historic baseball stadium that you guys went to this summer, as we went to Fenway, right? We saw the Phillies play the Red Sox there.
That was another mess.
Yeah, they didn't come through for us. They won the series, I think, in both cases.
No, we lost.
No, the Boston one they lost.
No. They won the first 2 games of the Boston series.
No, we went to the second game.
They won
of the
the first
series.
game of Boston, and they lost the second 2.
Oh, they did?
Mm-hmm.
They won the
first game, and then we went to the second game. They lost
the third.
They won Chicago,
and then they
though.
lost again.
Did Chicago they win the series?
They won the first 2, and then they lost.
And then they lost.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what it was. Either way, both times, classic stadiums. Watching the Phillies, they lost both times. Although they have the best record in baseball, we seem to have really bad luck with them this year. So
unfortunately,
that was literally getting off the plane, went and had breakfast, went to Wrigley Field, did the baseball game, walked around Wrigley, and then we went and met family up in Naperville and went to see some fireworks because it was the 4th of July. And then on Friday, we actually ended up going to the city, right?
Yeah, and the way you described Wrigley as historic is honestly how I described the city of Chicago, because it is such like a big city, and there's so many iconic buildings. Like we saw the Sears Tower, or what it used, or the Willis Tower as it used to be called.
What's the saying, Johan? It's spelled.
If it's spelled Willis and it's pronounced Sears.
And we also got to see a lot of cool locations. Like we walked past the road where the truck flip from The Dark Knight happened, and when I realized what road we were on, I had to take photos, and it got me really excited. And then literally like 2 streets over is the location where Ferris Bueller dances at the parade, and there's that like red structure that Cameron and the girlfriend stand in front of, and we got pictures in front of that. And it's so crazy how Chicago, which is defined by its like the movies of Dark Knight and Ferris Bueller, are literally that close to each other. And then going a little ahead, we took an architecture tour, which we got to see just how much Chicago has evolved. And we also passed by the 2 buildings where the Joker's goons shot out a zip line and went to the bank from the opening of Dark Knight. So that was such a highlight of the Chicago trip.
So the structure you're talking about is the Art Calder's Flamingo, and that's located right in the city near where we ended up stumbling on where the it's down a couple blocks off from where the Sears Tower or Willis Tower is, and not too far from where the Dark Knight was filmed. Which we stumbled on, because I remember you talking about, like, that was something you really, really wanted to do. We weren't sure where it was exactly, and literally we're like looking around, and I think you started to figure out, wait a second, this is that scene.
Yeah.
So it's perfect.
That was definitely his cup of tea. This trip.
Yeah. So we'll have some photos up if you're watching the podcast, you'll see what we're talking about. So yeah, that was an awesome day. And then what did we end up doing for dinner?
We went to I can't pronounce it. I just call it
Lou Malnati's is the correct pronunciation. We called it all kinds of different things.
I just called it.
Well, we were there.
Malnati's.
I kept calling it Illuminati's.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find it, and then it was because
But the odd thing about this restaurant is that Tony, you and I have been going to Chicago since 2006.
Yeah.
2005 or 2006.
Yeah.
And
long time.
We had never heard of this place.
No one
but
had ever told us
apparently
about
it's
it.
the place to go.
Yeah.
Because now this time around, everybody was like, oh, you guys have to go to this restaurant. When we did the architecture tour,
They said
our
that.
tour guide said the best pizza place to have is Lou Malnati's. So if you're going to Chicago, you have to check out Lou Malnati's. And I will say, it is really good.
Yeah.
It is very good.
And it's also real deep dish pizza, right? Because we learned at Giordano's that we really like.
They had like
really isn't.
They had like
deep
an
dish
extra
pizza.
extra layer.
It's like
of
a
dough.
pie is
Yeah,
what it is.
It's like stuffed pizza.
Yeah.
Is what it is. It's like layers. But this is really deep dish pizza, and it was pretty popular. And everybody kept talking about it, like, why didn't anybody tell us about this before? So we went, and it was great. Right down, right by the river. Right by the water tower.
Yes, on Michigan Avenue.
On Michigan Avenue. So yeah, that was
Really
pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a very, very nice restaurant. Pizza was great. So if you're ever in Chicago, definitely check that one out. Illuminati's was, yeah.
And then for Saturday, after we visited some family, we ended up going to this pretty cool place where we got to get these amazing shirts designed.
It's called
Yeah.
the T-shirt deli, right?
Yeah.
And the T-shirt deli, literally, it's a deli. You walk in, and there is like those things where like the deli meat sits at a deli shop, but it's all T-shirts, and it was really cool. You actually get your shirts wrapped in like how
Like
you
a
would get a sub
Yeah.
or a hoagie rolled in, and you get chips.
Yeah.
It comes in a bag, and you get chips. So you get your cool shirt, and then you get a snack with it. So I thought that was a really great concept. That was like the start of us getting ready for the race.
Yeah. It was so cool. Shout out to Chewy, because Chewy actually designed the shirts. You guys are wearing those shirts right now. And he actually designed them. He blended the flag of the city of Chicago. So that's the flag on the left. The flag on the right, of course, is our Let's Go Racing Family logo. And then also
The icon
Chicago
below is the street
Yeah.
logo. So
So shout out to Chewy, and shout out to the T-shirt deli in Chicago. If you're ever there, definitely something cool to check out. One of a kind type of t-shirt experience, and I think added a little something special to our Chicago trip.
And even if you don't like want to build your own shirt, they have their own shirts there that you can purchase, and they have some really cool like sayings and designs. So definitely check that out. I thought that was like one of the really cool experiences of Chicago.
Huge shout out to the T-shirt deli.
So we did that Saturday, but then while we're picking up the shirt, because we had family commitments and all that, that's why we couldn't go to the race that day. We were listening to the race. So it was a little bit of a preview of what we were hoping to have happen. So Gio, I know you were super excited. We listened to it. What happened?
Yeah, so I was watching the race the whole time, and we of course had it on the audio pumped up.
We're talking about the Xfinity.
Yeah, the Xfinity race.
Yeah, the Xfinity
on Saturday, and it was just a great race. I'd been paying attention to qualifying in the morning or that same morning, and SVG had won the pole, but his biggest competition was going to be Kyle Larson, who's also partaking in the race. But again, the difference is Larson's a Cup regular, SVG is full-time in Xfinity. So race is going on. It was incredible. It was just such an awesome fight between the two of them. Like, it was some of the best road course racing I've seen in NASCAR in general. And anyway, the race kind of winded down. Eventually, stage kind of like flipped everyone. People got stuffed in the pack. And, you know, like Dad says, the cream always rises to the top. In the last stage, SVG was actually behind Larson at the start, got past him, and just left. He took off and started gaining more positions, and Larson got stuck behind other cars.
Yeah, Larson really couldn't catch up.
He got up to third and then hits the inside wall in turn 12, nearly like loses it, gets super sideways, almost spun, but kept it together, and then a caution came out, and then after that I was like, oh yeah, he's definitely got this. He had to get around Jesse Love, I believe, and Ty Gibbs, and he was able to do that in just a couple laps, and he went on to win the race. So it was really exciting. Very good race, and super happy to see SVG win there. And we were hoping that would translate over to the next day.
To Sunday, yeah. And I'll tell you what, you know, we had planned all along to just do the Sunday race. I won't lie. There's a lot of regret. I love seeing our family, so I wouldn't trade that. And even the T-shirt deli experience. But I was like, man, I wish we were down there watching it. But it was super cool.
That was one of the best races of the year in motorsports in general. How good that was.
It was super cool.
So, it was really exciting to hear the race and see Shane win again, even though it was in the Xfinity, but he did win again.
Yeah.
So
he still owns those streets.
in the streets of Chicago. Yeah.
The cool thing was about that because the T-shirt deli was just outside the city, I was thinking, wow, I can't believe that there's racing going on that close in a city. It's still amazing to think about.
So let's talk about that. Let's get into Sunday, right? So
we went into the city, remember, after the shirts. We were going to go get our passes.
Yeah, we were going to try to get our passes, and it was just...
But it was closed. However, we did have a NASCAR encounter, though. Sebastian and I got dropped off, and we went into where
I forgot about this.
Where the passes distribution center was, and it happened to be inside of the hotel. I think it's like
Chicago
the Athletics Hotel. Yep. And we went in there, and while we waited for Tony to circle around to pick us up, we were just kind of chilling, and I started noticing that there were people with racing shirts, and I was like, oh, I think all the athletes, or the majority of them, drivers, are staying here in their teams. And we were just kind of standing by, and I see Noah Gregson and Richard Childers come down, right? And first I had seen Ty Dillon, his grandson. So I was like, oh, look, Sebastian, there's Ty Dillon, you know. And then later we saw Noah Gregson and Richard Childers come down, and he actually walked by us. I wasn't going to say anything because I didn't want to be one of these like creepy stalker fans, you know, that's hanging out in the hotel lobby and being like, oh my gosh, hi, Mr. Childers. But he looked over at Sebastian, and they kind of nodded, like just made eye contact and nodded. Didn't think anything of it. I was just kind of eavesdropping on their conversation. They were going to go eat somewhere. And it didn't dawn on me until after.
Not creepy at all. Not creepy at all.
Just eavesdropping.
Well, they were literally I like Ty Dillon was literally side by side next to me, and I could hear their conversation. I was like, okay, well, I mean, it's not like I'm move over, but it dawned on me afterwards that Richard Childers made eye contact with Sebastian because Sebastian was wearing his Kyle Busch shirt, the number 8 shirt.
The
new
Richard
one.
Childress Kyle Busch
Right,
shirt.
exactly. And afterwards, I was like, oh my goodness, Sebastian, you could have said hello, Mr. Childers. And he would have been like, oh, well, yeah, hello, how are you? You're clearly a fan of one of my drivers. So that was interesting. It was almost like, I think to you it was surreal, right? It was kind of shock. So you didn't know even what to say. But yeah, just kind of being in that element. And we've been around NASCAR drivers before, right?
Yeah.
When we're in the pits. But I think it's different when they're like out and about and you are kind of like, oh, it's so-and-so. In fact, on Friday, when we were in the city, we were walking by the Bean and Carson Hocevar walked by and I was like, hey, Carson Hocevar.
Was that when he was
And
on his
then-
little scooter?
No, that was
that was
Sunday
Sunday.
morning.
Sunday, yeah,
No,
we
he was
saw
just
him.
walking.
Oh, that's right. That's
we
right.
also
He
saw
We saw Brad
Keselowski. I was like, hey,
and
Brad.
just walking.
They were just walking from the area of where the track is back to the hotel where they were staying. So
Yeah.
I was just like
We
saying hi to
also-
people.
Johan and I noticed Brendan Poole walking by. He's one of the full-time Xfinity guys who
Just-
Just walking the
yeah.
city like
Yeah.
regular people.
It was just so weird because like you see like everybody walking around, right? And then you see NASCAR drivers and the crew members, and I saw people on the streets that were just confused and they were like giving the crew members looks like, what are those guys wearing? Why are they dressed like that? What's with these bags?
Yeah.
And they're just walking around, they're talking, having like doing their own thing. It's just so weird because, you know, there's no infield for them. There's no garage for them to stay in their area. They're literally like intertwined with like everybody else because it's just such an open experience.
They're kinda
It's
like
just-
residents.
Yeah. It was so different. Like,
And I think unless you're a diehard fan, right? Like people weren't going to notice that they were drivers because they're wearing regular clothes
Yeah.
and just walking through the streets. I noticed because I see this tall guy coming. I'm like, hey, that's Carson. I was like, Carson Hocevar. And he turned and everybody, like, we all
Yeah.
waved at him. Okay, so then Sunday was finally here. And so we took the train because we were staying out in the suburbs. We took the train into the city to go to the NASCAR race. We went to Union Station, and then from there we walked over back to the hotel that we had been at the day before to get our passes. And on the way over there, we again got to experience more NASCAR drivers, sights or scenes.
yeah, we saw
And we saw
Harrison Burton.
Burton.
Josh Berry, and one that has been kind of difficult to see all this time. You know, since we've gotten our passes and all this experience, I've been able to meet Logano. Johan's met Chase Elliott and Jimmy Johnson, you know, the 7-time champion. You'd
The
think
GOAT.
that'd be pretty hard to see, but he met him once and got him to sign his jacket. And Sebastian just has not seen Kyle Busch ever.
Yeah, Kyle Busch has been my favorite driver since I was a kid, and I've been wanting to meet him so badly. And I think, like, when we were in that hotel, we were waiting, and we saw him walk by. I couldn't take a picture with him then because he was going in a completely different direction. But I thought, oh my word, could it happen? Because
like he's real.
yeah, because the day before we
the
saw
man,
Childress,
the myth, and the legend.
and then I saw Bush there, and it was like, I was literally thinking, I'm like the Blues Brothers. I've seen the sign, and I'm on a mission from God.
To meet Kyle Busch. So we were so that had happened, but then we knew we needed to get over to the actual field area. Why were we on our way, and why did we have to be there so early?
Because we were going to be interviewed by Telemundo, the Chicago division of that, and they did a really cool section on us. It was about 3 minutes, and they just talked to us about why we love NASCAR and what we were doing 1,000 miles away from home to watch race cars go around the streets of the city.
So I'm going to do something that we haven't really done before. We've done other interviews, but for this podcast, I'm actually going to show you all the full segment. So we're going to drop it in right now, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it afterwards.
Priscila Ferreira estuvo presente y conversó con una familia que es fanática de NASCAR. Nos platican cómo dicho deporte ha impactado sus vidas. Priscila, adelante, te escuchamos en vivo.
Jorge, conocí a esta familia de 5 esta mañana y me cuentan que para ellos NASCAR es mucho más que un deporte, es un estilo de vida del cual les permite conectar como familia y también conocer distintas ciudades como Chicago el día de hoy.
Es algo como un sueño de nuestra familia.
La familia Mourinho viajó desde la ciudad de Orlando y este domingo se hizo realidad el sueño de estar presente en la carrera callejera de NASCAR en Chicago.
El año pasado queríamos venir y no pudimos, y este año se hizo realidad y estar aquí en la ciudad y ver la carrera en las calles de Chicago es muy emocionante.
Tony nos cuenta que su primera carrera a la que acudió fue en el 2004, deporte por medio del cual también conoció a su ahora esposa en Daytona y del cual se ha convertido en el deporte favorito de su familia, incluyendo sus 3 hijos de 12, 16 y 19 años de edad. Realmente es algo especial para mí que me da alegría ver las carreras todos los domingos, cada semana y hace que la familia se una. Aunque esta familia ha viajado a diferentes ciudades del país para acudir a carreras de NASCAR, nos cuentan que para ellos la carrera en Chicago es diferente. Hemos estado en Daytona y Atlanta. Esas son pistas que construyen para carreras. Aquí tuvieron que transformar las calles de Chicago en una pista. Para Giovanni, NASCAR es equivalente a lo que para otras familias es el fútbol americano o baloncesto. Pero para ellos su pasión es tanta que durante la pandemia comenzaron su propio podcast titulado Letsgoracingfamily, en la que comparten sobre su pasión por NASCAR, los viajes y simplemente lo que es ser una familia. Al crecer era el deporte principal que mis hermanos y yo veíamos y simplemente creció en mí y ser una familia a la que realmente les gustan los autos, especialmente los deportes de motor, ha sido genial y poder asistir a las carreras frecuentemente ha sido una experiencia increíble. Para la familia Mourinho, NASCAR no es solo un deporte, sino un vínculo que los une y del cual esperan poder disfrutar por generaciones.
Cuando ya los niños crezcan y tengan sus propias familias, que también es algo que nosotros podemos hacer con los nietos y con el resto de la familia.
La verdad que disfruté conversar con esta familia sobre esta pasión que comparten, que es NASCAR, y también por medio de la cual tuvieron la oportunidad de conocer Chicago y ver su rica arquitectura. Por cierto, Giovanni me cuenta que algún día le gustaría ser corredor de NASCAR, así que estaremos muy pendientes y ojalá que algún día lo podamos ver correr por estas calles. Desde Grand Park, yo soy Priscila Ferreira. Jorge, regreso contigo al estudio.
Mi querida Priscila, y escuchamos el rugir de los motores, a disfrutar de toda esa adrenalina. Muchísimas gracias por tu reporte en vivo. Espero que estés disfrutando.
So I probably should have mentioned the entire interview was done in Spanish. But hopefully you got that hint when we told you that it was a Telemundo interview. And Mom did such a great job really holding down that whole interview. And you guys, got it off.
We got
easy.
a little off easy, yeah.
You got to do your parts in English, and our reporter actually translated it for you. But it was super cool opportunity to talk about our love of NASCAR, our podcast, and why we were willing to travel over 1,000 miles just to watch a NASCAR race at one of the most surreal locations they've ever done, which was right there in the midst of the city. And it was kind of cool when we were doing the interview. Like, I'm being interviewed by this reporter and I'm answering the questions, but I just could not help but just look around this canyon of buildings that surrounded us and how cool and, again, surreal the whole experience was. But then you had a really cool
something really interesting that happened to me was that when it was my turn to do the interview, I was asked that what were some of the things that I liked about NASCAR, and I said, well, one of the things that I really like is the fact that the access that we have to drivers and the teams. And right as I was saying that, in comes Richard Petty. And I said, for example, right behind you is Richard Petty. And kid you not, 15 feet away from me was Richard Petty.
And it was funny because none of us had realized, because we're all zoned in on Mom. I think I kind of spaced out. I was just stand here and look pretty for the interview. And as soon as she's done, on a golf cart, goes Richard Petty. And I'm like, oh my word, Mom, you summoned him. What in the world?
Yeah,
it was just a funny little thing.
It was pretty funny not understanding what they were saying in Spanish. And then suddenly Richard Petty comes by and I'm like, huh?
Well, what was cool about it, and the reason why we saw Richard Petty, is you guys saw in the interview, we were right in front of a Bubba Wallace McDonald's car. Makes perfect sense, right? Bubba Wallace, McDonald's 23, Michael Jordan in the city of Chicago. So that was a perfect backdrop for the interview. But literally right next to us was a show car of Richard Petty because of his hat statue that was custom made for the city of Chicago. 75
years of the name Petty in NASCAR.
And they were commemorating that literally as we were getting interviewed. And I had no idea until afterwards your mom said it. he was like right there while mom was doing her part. So it was kind of cool. So then after we were done the interview, then we moved over to the quote unquote garage area where all the trailers were parked.
Down on Columbus
haulers.
Avenue, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. And then we also went
to where all the cars and the teams were.
Yeah.
And that was cool because when we walked over there, it was like very active. Teams were running cars, testing them. You could see officials inspecting them, making sure everything was up to par. They were still really loud. Despite having mufflers and being modified so they're slightly more quiet because of the city, they were still really loud.
Still really loud.
It was
Very.
so loud. Like, people underestimate how loud these cars are. Like, they might be the loudest cars in like motorsport right now. I mean, remember last year when they took it to Le Mans? It blew people away. It was like waking them up every 4 minutes. So just like being down there and seeing all that and how active it was really cool. They were moving cars, taking them down onto pit road, inspecting them, literally finishing inspection right behind us, like opening the tents up, pulling the things off. And we were feet away. I have a couple of really cool photos of the teams pushing the cars. We'll be able to put them on screen here. At Bento Box on Instagram. I upload photos there too. And it was just cool to be so close and to see all the cars and the crews and everything. And it was pretty cool because we were in a really good spot. And we had actually left later and towards like when the race was going to start. We actually came back, right?
Yeah.
And
because the thing you said, there were the cars, there were the teams, no drivers. And I wanted to say this. This is a
Christopher
helmet
Bell walking by
that we like to buy. When we had special access, we did this for the 500, the 75th anniversary, the beginning of the season, we did one, and I like to get the drivers if we know we're going to get access. So we bought this special Chicago helmet. We went around
and
drivers.
We went around and got some
We got
souvenirs. We got some souvenirs, and then we kind of just wanted to mill around and see what was going on with like the over at Buckingham fountain and all of that. So we kind of went our separate ways. Like you guys wanted to go do the iRacing thing, and then we went to go get free McDonald's.
But then we went up to the Air Force. They had I think it was the Air Force.
it was like it was like an Air Force tent. And
who was there?
Bubba Wallace. And the crazy part was, line was like basically closed, and we were the last people to see him, and he actually signed the helmet.
We were walking and we were
right
like,
on the front.
Look, there's Bubba Wallace. So we kind of jumped in line.
So we did get it. So we got one driver.
Oh, yeah. So we started off with Bubba was the first one to sign the helmet.
First one to sign the helmet. So we're going around. We go back down the other side, and I don't remember if the boys were with us.
No, so that's why we had separated. The three of us were together, and them two were off doing something else. We went down where the trucks were, and then we decided, hey guys, let's meet up again and let's head back into like the pit road.
But as we were walking behind the haulers, who did we see?
Oh, we saw Samantha Bush.
So we were getting closer.
We're like,
his team owner, him like a couple feet away, and I was
no, I was with you.
You were with
yes,
you.
He
then
was.
we were like, oh, there's Samantha Bush, but she was talking to someone.
Yeah, so we didn't want to interrupt.
So we didn't want to interrupt or whatnot. But like we're walking by and we're like, okay, Kyle's got to be here somewhere. I bet she's in the hauler.
You guys could smell her.
But we weren't sure. We were getting closer.
So
okay. So then we walk around. Then we meet up.
Yeah, and we got Bob Pockris and Paul Swan of the Austin Dillon team to sign the helmet. So 3 signatures.
3 signatures, yeah.
And then
so our goal at this point was just to meet up again and go back and go to pit road.
Yeah.
That's what we were going to do. So to get to pit road, we had to go back through that same street where all the cars were, getting tested on and all of that. And so we went back that way, and they were starting to take some of the cars.
Yeah, they were starting to take some of the other cars.
So we stopped to watch that.
And just to give an idea of the location, what was the museum that this was all?
The Art Museum?
Really close?
It was right behind the Art Museum.
We're literally behind the Art Museum. There's like a gate, right? And then we're kind of lining up there.
And mind you, there's like all the cars are gone, all the crews are gone.
And it's getting quiet.
It's quiet. And I'm like, I look over and I read a sign on the fence, and I'm like, driver lounge. And I'm like, they haven't come out yet. They're all in there. And like within 10 seconds of me saying that, I'm like, Dad, hey, look at this sign. They all start pouring
Denny
out
Hamlin.
the
I was like,
entire
oh my goodness.
grid.
Here comes Denny
Every
Hamlin.
single
Here comes
driver.
Denny Hamlin.
So we're like handing the helmet off to the boys. We're like, go get this driver.
It could not have been more perfect too, because like I don't know if we weren't supposed to be there or not, but we were like the only group there with passes. There was like a couple other like people lingering, but it was just like right there at the perfect time, seeing everybody come out, and it was just really cool.
insane.
It was like the perfect spot.
It was perfect. It was like shooting fish in a barrel. And yeah, we got several drivers. We should have brought the list out, but do you guys remember? Is Denny Hamlin's on here?
Ty Gibbs is on there. Tyler Reddick.
Brad
Kyle
Keselowski.
Larson.
Brad Keselowski, Kyle Larson.
Shane Van
Gisbergen is on the helmet too.
That's
He's
right.
also on my hat.
And he's also on the
Right
hat.
there.
And that was one driver that,
that Gio really wanted to
wanted to meet because we
Yes.
hadn't met him before. And he really wanted to get his hat signed. So that was super cool. So there's actually a clip I'm going to we'll show right now that is Johan. I think you were the one that got Shane to sign the helmet. And then you can see at the tail end is Gio with his hat, and he got Shane to sign it. And, and Shane was pretty popular because he just won. He's like the favorite for this race. I think, and the other thing too that was interesting, while all this is happening, they're being interviewed. Some of them, literally, as they're walking. Like Kyle Larson, we got signed here. And he was on camera. Like, they were like watching him go to the grid and
Huge
stuff.
shout out to these drivers. I'm like Tyler Reddick and him were those are the two notable drivers that were both on camera, and they could have just ignored me and kept walking, but these guys made time while they're on camera to sign the helmet, and it was really cool of them.
So cool. It was very nice, and they could have. And I encourage you guys, hey, look, we don't know when this access may end for us. And so we take advantage of it. Be respectful. I always tell you guys, be respectful. But you guys are always really good. I know you get nervous sometimes approaching them, but for the most part, they've always been really gracious, and they sign the hats, no problem, the helmet, whatever, or take pictures. So then all this is happening, and then what happens to you guys?
Well, here's the thing. When the drivers were coming out, I didn't even realize what was going on. I had to go to like the special elevated bathroom right outside, and and when I walk out the door, I just see the drivers, and I'm like, what did I just walk into? And then it started to click. These are the drivers. It was like, where's Bush? Where's Kyle? I got to see. I got to get closer. And then I see him. He's in the back, and he's coming out, and I'm like, this is my chance. I grab my phone. I walk up towards him, basically to get in front of him.
kind of intercepted him.
Yeah. I was like, hey, Kyle, can I take a photo? And he's like, yeah. And I take a selfie with him. I finally did it. I finally accomplished my one goal. I met Kyle Busch, and I got a photo with him.
And he was smiling. He smiled for the photo. That was like the best part.
Yeah,
like he was really gracious because, you never know with Kyle Busch, but he was really gracious and he smiled. I was like, that brought joy. That brought joy to my heart.
No other drivers tried to run him off the road, so he was in a good mood. And yeah, he was real. It was one of my favorite photos I've ever seen of you guys with drivers and stuff. And now my three boys got their guys. They met them. Sebastian finally met Kyle Busch. If you ever see this or a clip, thank you. You don't know what it meant for him just to take that selfie. And then Gio, of course, met Joey Logano years ago and has met him a couple of times. We even met his dad, took a great photo. And then Johan finally meeting Jimmy Johnson, getting him to autograph his jacket and seeing him and then overcome with emotion. It was really cool. So like we hit the three, and then Karen and I have been fortunate to meet our favorite drivers in NASCAR right now. All of us actually have. We've met Daniel Suarez and Bubba Wallace and Ryan Blaney. And Ryan was really cool. I had a quick little moment. Johan, I think you were the one that gave him the helmet.
on there.
Yeah, Ryan's on here.
Yeah.
And as he was walking up, I was like, go get yourself another championship, man. And I think he appreciated it. I was like, yeah, man, thank you. And then he took off and went to the grid. And had a decent run. Where did Ryan end up finishing?
I think it's like top 10.
Top 10
He
finish.
finished top 10. And spoiler alert, the very next week, he wins in Pocono. So I'm just saying, I wish the guy goodwill, and all of a sudden he wins.
You're his good luck charm.
I am.
I mean,
Ryan Blaney, just remember.
Another spoiler alert. Indy, he got third.
So he's on a bit of a streak. So that was all led to and then we went down pit road and we walked through pit road and ended up right in front of the stage where they were doing the starting lineup.
The driver introduction. So we actually got to see, they split the introductions in half. So like half of them went to the right, half of them went to the left, and we were standing on the left-hand side. So Johan actually got to like give high fives to several drivers.
Yeah. So that was super cool. We got to do that. And then the other thing, the one thing I was like so sure we are going to get to do, but then he ended up leaving. The president of NASCAR, Mr. Phelps, Steve Phelps, was standing right behind us. And he was just taking photos, videos, taking it all and kind of watching the whole thing. And I really wanted to call him over to take a selfie. So I was like, we were taking photos, watching it. And then the next thing I know, I turned back and he was gone. But he was there. The it was kind of funny. The mayor of Chicago came out. He got a good old welcome from maybe people that didn't vote for him. I don't know, but they were booing him.
He got the Roger Goodell treatment.
He got the Roger Goodell, so maybe he should feel blessed. Roger Goodell got booed in Chicago during the NFL draft. So, I guess good company. But the mayor was there, and then they did the lineup with all the drivers, and you got to slap
And
a
then-
5 and whatnot.
And then we go to our spot, and the race is
we
going to
found
start.
this really great spot. So I have to say
It was
something.
down in
We found a spot over by Turn 8,
Yep.
which is
Turn 8,
coming
9, and
into
10.
Congress, by the Congress Hotel. I think it was the perfect spot because we were close enough to the track to see them as they were coming. And then there was also a TV, not a TV.
Like a
There was a
screen.
screen right in front of us because there were stands on the, close to us.
So obviously,
And-
while we couldn't see him on the rest of the
On
track,
the rest of the track, we had the screen to watch, and then
and
you
then
could
you
hear them as they
come
were
by
coming.
and see him go through.
It was just a really great location.
down on Michigan Avenue.
And then, of course, the race starts.
Well, hold on,
Right
real
as
quick.
they-
Right before the start of the race,
Right
it
as
was
they fire
such-
engines.
Well, hold on. It was such a good location. Alvin Kamara running
Oh,
back
that's
for the
right.
New Orleans Saints comes up. We had a friend that was hosting him. She comes over, says hi to us, and we come up and we're all like waving, and he's like, "Hey, fam," and he's like giving us hugs, and we took a photo with him. So
Yeah.
that was awesome. Saw him there.
Yes,
he is
very unexpected.
He's a spokesperson for NASCAR. So I think he's employed by NASCAR as a representative of the sport to bring to new fans. And so really, really cool. And so anyway, so he was there. Then the race starts.
Well, before
and
the race
right
starts.
as it's starting, we're looking at the weather radar weeks prior to this, and we're like, okay, no rain, sunshine. The race yesterday was beautiful,
Oh, the day was
sunshine,
When we
gorgeous
get
for the
there-
Xfinity
gorgeous race for Xfinity, and then
when we
it starts to the clouds start rolling, and we're like, okay, well they're gonna move.
Yeah,
it
so
doesn't
it's
say
just gonna be
anything.
cloudy.
Gio
And
started
then-
getting nervous. He's like, "Mom, I don't like those clouds." I'm like, "No, it's fine. It's fine. They're just gonna go away."
It's been
And
sunny all
then-
day.
And then right as they're drivers, start your engines. Droplets of water start pouring on the track, and the race start gets postponed like half an hour. So we're all waiting around until it kind of recedes, and we're like, all right, is that it? Is it just going to be gloomy? But we should be good. They get the race going, and then
Drivers had the options to switch to
yeah, you
wet
could do
or-
whatever tire you want. And that first stage where they were running was
was really
awesome.
good.
It was great. You had
Yeah, and the
such
rain wasn't hard enough
No.
to stop the race.
Yeah, and you had such an incredible battle between Shane Van Gisbergen and Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, Ty Gibbs. Heck, even Bubba Wallace was up there. Those five or six, however many I said, they were up front and they were fighting, and it was such a fun, entertaining fight to see. SVG came out on top for the first stage, got his first career stage win, which is so funny because when he starts his full-time Cup Series career, he's already going to start with a career win and a stage win. So
I mean, I have to say one thing about the stage. Even though the rain sucks as a fan, I mean, the rain was a little light, and it added the interesting play of strategy of, do you put in the wets or the dries? Maybe if you're on the dries, you have to play it a little low, and it was interesting. It wasn't like pegging hard rain or raining cats and dogs.
No,
It was fun, and we were like, okay, we're in for a treat here. Really good race.
And we're gonna pull up a photo right now that it just demonstrates how cool it was that they were racing. You can see the water kind of coming up from the tires and everything. So again, really cool start, even though it wasn't ideal, but they were running.
And then
the
rounds.
stage ends and it starts raining again, and NASCAR's debating, okay, what do we do? Do we bring him in here? Are we going to tiptoe him around the track? And then they end up eventually starting the second stage. Guys start switching to wet tires because there's more rain on track. And it just kept getting worse and worse. Eventually, in the middle of the stage, SVG got wiped out by Chase Briscoe, who just lost complete control of his car, taken out, which was unfortunately funny that the back of SVG's car said, "Can't stop the sauce."
But I guess Chase
and
Briscoe could.
Briscoe rear ends him where it says that and took him out of the race.
And then it was became mayhem after that.
Yeah, it got
The
way
rain.
worse.
The rain came, and it came down
literally
hard.
After stage one ended, they're doing caution laps, and then I remember I was in line to go to the bathroom, and suddenly the rain just starts pouring down, And then
And then we had to go.
We had to literally stand under a tree
We
for
spent
2.5
yeah,
hours.
we spent like 2 hours under a tree. We had this like beach blanket kind of thing. So thankfully one side of it was at least
Somewhat
water
waterproof.
resistant. And so we held it up kind of like an umbrella. We got underneath it, and the tree, between the tree and the blanket, it saved us from being literally drenched from head to toe.
And yeah, it was crazy how much water had come. And then eventually the rain kind of resided, and the race had to basically, it resumed. And then later on, Kyle Larson wipes out. He has a big brake lockup. I don't remember what happened to Ty Gibbs. I think just kind of stage
fell
cycle.
back
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the race got really weird because at this point, mind you, we're in the city. They don't get to race on Monday. They're not really allowed to race on Monday, so they got to finish the race. But sunset's coming at 8:20. So they're like, race is going to end at 8:20. This is when it's done. So we're not going to make it the full distance. So they switch it from a laps race to a timed race. And now there's 33 minutes on the clock, and you're going to the very end. And it was just super weird. Joey Hands won stage 2, and with like 10 minutes to go, we were like, is he going to pull an SVG? Like come and race one time, win Chicago? And then out of the blue, Alex Bowman's in second, goes on to pass Joey Hand, and somehow wins the race.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
that is what happens when the two favorites for the weekend get wrecked out early.
Overall, the overall experience of the Chicago street course was amazing. We had a ton of fun. The race, not so much, and I think that was mainly because of the rain.
Yeah.
I think had it not rained, it would have been
it would have been for a
an
treat.
awesome race.
Which is why I want to say, I hope the race does return next year.
Yeah.
If they have to move it to a different time frame where it's not going to rain, perfect, because the experience itself makes it worth it. And if the racing is good, like it was on Saturday with the Xfinity Series, and it showed it can be good, if there is no rain on the race day, this could potentially become a marquee NASCAR event. I think
I think
it
they're timed
has
to
the
charm.
chance to it.
Yeah.
yeah.
And even just making it earlier, because throughout the day it was perfect, but for some reason they started the race at 4:30 Eastern time. If they had started the race at 2:30 Eastern time,
It would have been perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
compared to when you look at when they started the Xfinity Series,
Yeah.
it was at 12 in Chicago or 1 Eastern time. So
right.
why would such a big time difference?
Yeah.
It
you know?
might have
I-
been a TV thing, to be honest.
yeah, I think
Maybe
like
NBC.
4 o'clock's good time.
They wanted it later because it was 4th of July. I don't know. But it's a good question. Had they done it earlier,
I mean, like you guys said, 2 o'clock. They might have not been able to finish before the rain came, but at least you would have time for it to dry the track and then still have time to finish the full distance.
I think had it started around the 2 o'clock hour to
it would have been
2:30,
fine.
the race would have ended before the rain came. So I hope that's something that NASCAR takes a look at. Again, like you said, it might be a TV thing, but if it's about a TV thing, we want to give the viewers a really great
Yeah.
experience. So doing it earlier and having that actual, like the whole race be complete. So just like the Xfinity race, that's what fans want to see. So I hope they look into that, and possibly next year, if they go back to Chicago, maybe start it earlier.
Also,
in
please
the
don't
day.
shorten the race to 50 laps. We need it back to 75.
Yeah, I think
Because then if
75
it
is
rains
good
next
distance.
year, they're going to shorten it to
Yeah.
25.
25 lap race.
And then the
Be-
Xfinity
be-
race
Well,
is
then,
that
if
with
that
no
was the
laps.
case, what was the stage? The stage length? 25 laps?
It was 20. It would have been 25 laps.
So
it was 25,
SVG
25, 25.
SVG would have won.
Yeah, it would have.
It would have been good. But yes, I mean, overall, what a dream weekend, dream race experience. And
I mean, it's
something that I like. You said it. I'm gonna steal your line. You said it so many times. I never thought in my lifetime I would see NASCAR racing in a street like Chicago, the streets of
I mean,
Chicago.
when you also think about the story behind how this track popped up and why they were racing in Chicago, it's incredible. Like during the COVID pandemic, iRacing, who is very close ties to NASCAR because of the studio that they once were, they were just like, what if we go to Chicago and we make a street course for NASCAR? Because they've never done it. And they went up and
For
because-
iRacing.
For iRacing, yeah. And they were like, hey, can we shut down this part of the city? And they're like, go ahead, do whatever. And they did. They shut it down. They scanned all the streets, put up the walls and everything, and made the first iteration, the virtual version of the Chicago street course. And then iRacing also had access to the next gen cars, and they stuck both the new car before it was even being raced back in 2021 and the track, which before it even existed, put them together in an event, streamed it on Fox, and had all the drivers compete, and it went horribly. It was a wreck fest. There was a ton of problems with it, and they were like, okay, cool. This went bad. let's fix it. And they basically went back, rescanned the track, or did modifications to it, changed it up to make it more safe and make it less prone to wrecks. And they did like one or two, or they did another iteration, and that one was on iRacing for a while until 2023 when the race actually came to fruition. They updated it one final time, and it was good. It was ready to be raced, and it proved to be raceable. And that's why we have the Chicago Street Course. So for me, what seemed like a pipe dream a long time ago of having NASCAR race in a street circuit, I've always been a fan of street circuits. It came to life because of iRacing and NASCAR and the opportunity that they had to do it. And I honestly don't know what better city they could have chosen.
No,
Absolutely.
I've thought about that too. I don't know.
I know. We actually, when we were there, we were actually, what city would top this?
Because New York's really hard because it's such a densely populated city.
I think the uniqueness of Chicago, and if you haven't been there, is that where the road, like Lakeshore, is kind of on the back side or the front side of the buildings. And so you have this panoramic view of the city. And, so I think that's what makes it unique.
And what did we learn on the architecture
Right.
river tour, right? When we went on the river tour on Monday and they were talking about the way the buildings were designed and built. What did we learn?
They were spaced out. They weren't all like clumped together, which is something that New York is like.
It makes the city more breathable.
But
and
you
there's more room.
also cannot put buildings on one side, on the other side of Michigan Avenue, like where Lakeshore is and Michigan Avenue. You can't have like these really tall buildings. And so that is why you have like Museum Campus, you have Lakeshore where people walk and you can see the Lake Michigan, and then you see the skyline of Chicago.
Yeah, so it's the space that they have to give between the buildings. It's just an architectural thing. And the other thing with Chicago, which we learned, is that there were significant points in the city's history that allowed it to become what it is today. One of them was the Great
Fire of Chicago.
And
The 4 Fs.
Yeah, the 4 Fs. What were they? Do you
The
remember?
forts, the fire, the fair, and the fair.
And, there were
Two World's Fairs
Two World's
were
Fairs.
held in Chicago.
So Chicago is an architect's dream because it was a blank canvas. And that is why the city it boasts some of the most architecturally renowned buildings in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And even and also some of the most well-known architect firms. Like the biggest building in the world is what?
The Burj Khalifa.
And where is that?
Dubai.
In Dubai. The same designers,
same
architects that designed that building designed the Sears Tower, the Willis Tower, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that when I was being interviewed by Telemundo, I was asked was, other than NASCAR being here in Chicago, what do you like best about Chicago? So my answer was the architecture. What was your favorite thing about Chicago?
Mine was the food.
Honestly, I would have to say just the experience of being in Chicago. What we learned on the tour, the architecture, the food, like Sebastian said. Honestly, everything. I love the experience.
The whole city.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I didn't get asked this question in my part of the interview, but now I'm going to have to say the architecture and just the history of it. Like I'd taken U.S. history prior this year, and I'd known about the Great Chicago Fire, but I didn't think much of it until we went there and I remembered it. And I'm like, wow, it's just the history and the architecture in the city is just incredible.
So what I think I'm going to say, I love the architecture, but I wasn't into sports growing up. I'm actually from Philadelphia, but my love of sports, which translates into NASCAR, actually started in the city of Chicago. I was living in Chicago in 1992, right in the middle of Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls' first run at a championship. And there is very few cities in the world, and I will say Philadelphia is one of them, but New York doesn't come close to either city. I will say that. There are very few cities in the world that love their sports teams as much as Chicago and Philly. And to have lived in Chicago during the Bulls three-peat the first time around, to watch the Cubbies finally cross the line, the history that's around those stadiums, whether it's Wrigley Field or Soldier Field, and to an extension, what is the United Center now. Like, I think the sports and the way that city embraces sports is pretty darn cool. We talked about what other city could do it. I think Philly might be an interesting city to ever put it, but I just don't know if it can take the cars driving around those roads, because the design is just different. There's more space in Chicago that allows it to happen. And Chicago is the perfect city for a NASCAR race.
They could do it in Vegas.
They could do it in Vegas, but I don't know if they would, being that they have F1's already doing it.
Yeah.
And then they have a NASCAR track like down the road. But that would be kind of cool.
Maybe NASCAR outbids F1.
I will say this. One thing is, even though we were there for the NASCAR race, we still went and visited the city. We talked about that, did the architecture tour, did a bunch of sightseeing.
Oh, we went up to the Hancock.
Oh yeah, we went up to the Hancock Center, and what do they call it? 360 Chicago, which is where you can view out, and it's what floor was that? Do you remember?
It was like floor 96.
All I know is we were 1,000
no,
feet in the
94.
air.
Yeah, we were really high. That was super cool. But everywhere we went, and people noticed that we had like NASCAR stuff, it was very obvious why we were in the city. And even a couple folks we talked to on the train had said that they were excited that that NASCAR was there. They wish they could have been down there for the race. So it was actually, even though that you might have heard in the news, like people in Chicago didn't want NASCAR, I think that was more political, to be honest.
I feel like it's more of a vocal minority.
They were excited.
Let
it was
the people talk.
a big event. And the thing that NASCAR did that was super cool is they made it more than just a race. It was a weekend. It was concerts and all that.
It was definitely, it was an experience. And now being there in person, having been there in person, I realize why like this race had so many new viewers last year, or new people that came to a race for the first time, because it really is an experience, and it's not like when you're at a track.
Yeah. If you are ever considering going to one of the big events, it's got to be, you got to go to Daytona.
Of course.
You got to go to Bristol.
Yep.
You got to go to Charlotte, and you got to go to Chicago. Those are the ones.
I agree.
I will agree on all four.
I agree. I think those are really good. And those are, right now I think it's Brickyard is the other one that's considered the crown jewel. That's what are the four crown jewels?
Daytona 500, Coke 600,
and Bristol.
Brickyard 400, and the Southern 500.
Oh, the Southern. Okay. But then you throw in
But we're
Bristol,
talking
too.
about what, like, if you were going to go to see a race at a track or at the location,
iconic.
those ones that Gio mentioned are.
And the great thing about Chicago is that it's like we've said, there's so many great things to experience outside of the race. The Cubs at Wrigley, the architecture tour, the Chicago hot dogs at Super Dog, or the deep dish pizza at Luminati's. There's even products like Starbucks and McDonald's where you can find anywhere, but they have their own special twists, like the Starbucks Reserve or the International McDonald's at Burger University.
Yeah, Hamburger University is pretty cool. That's where Chicago's McDonald's headquarters is at. So yeah, super cool. Obviously, we loved it, and I think if we'll see how things plan out next year. But I think definitely
hopefully we'll do it again.
To make a return trip to the city of Chicago. So
absolutely.
So with that, Gio, why don't you take us out?
Yeah. Thank you for watching and listening on in. Make sure to follow all of our socials at Let's Go Racing Family, and check out our website. And thank you for listening. See you. All right, hold on. I forgot how to finish. That's not how we finish it. Let's Go Racing Family, out.